This is Greg Troutwine with Maritime Reporter TV, and we're very pleased to be joined today by Stuart Ostrow, the president of ShipMoney. Stuart, first and foremost, good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me here.
Okay. Well, Stuart, as we were just discussing before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, you were the last business dinner that I had when I was in Fort Lauderdale, which seems like 3 years ago in February. And I remember hearing the story then, but how exactly did you create ShipMoney and get into a career in the maritime business?
I would like to say I'm the accidental salesman. By professional training, I'm actually a CPA, a Big Six CPA, and was always one of those frustrated accountants. And many, many years ago, I read a business plan that talked about prepaid. And I always like to say it was an interesting idea, but a really poorly written plan. And it talked about this evolution of this third leg of the card schemes. And I began to do research, and I realized that Visa and MasterCard were evolving their networks into this concept called prepaid. There was credit, which has been around for the better part of 50 years. There is debit, which has been around for, say, 20 years. And there was this emerging third leg to the scheme called prepaid. And there are many varieties of prepaid. Gift cards, happy birthday, Greg, I give you a $100 Visa card. You can use it all over the world. There is incentive cards. You buy a set of tires and you get $50. And then, of course, there was payroll. And I'm an accountant, and I began to do this research, and I realized that there was this tremendous opportunity. We wrote a business plan, did a friends and family raise, basically figured it out, found a bank in Chicago that was very early in prepaid, loved my business plan, and said, let's do business together. And my first program actually was not maritime. It was for very specialized insurance payments, basically for senior citizens. And through a college friend of mine, he introduced me to a company called MTN, Maritime Telecommunications Network, which was a South Florida-based SATCOM company that provided services to the cruise line industry. They virtually, at the time, had a monopoly on the industry. And they have provided internet services to passengers and to crew members. And on about 90 of their vessels, they would put a cafe manager, basically to manage that business. And post 9/11, they had more and more difficulty paying these individuals. They were all foreign nationals. They came over to the United States, train in their offices. They'd spend a couple weeks. They'd set them up with a bank account. They'd send them out to the ship. So this college friend introduced me to MTN, and I showed them this program. And they said, this is great. We're having a problem with our crew members. We understand how prepaid works. We can open up an account instantaneously. We can pay our crew members. Away we go. So that program was successful. And at the time, the CEO of the company came to me and said, Stuart, why don't we do this for the maritime industry? We have a footprint. We have tremendous contacts. I believe that there's a need. And he began to make introductions. And I realized this giant light bulb went off my head that said, oh, my God, you have this vertical market that represents 200,000 crew members. They all come from foreign countries, and they're all paid in cash. And it was the perfect opportunity to introduce a payroll card program. So that was the first sort of light bulb that went off my head to recognize that there was an opportunity. And the second piece of this is as I began to research the industry, I realized, well, what do these individuals do when they get paid in cash on a ship? Once a month, a Brinks truck with $1 million would back up to a port. Two guys would bring it on with bags. The crew purser and a couple other people would spend the entire night breaking it up into envelopes. The next day, there'd be a line of individuals. They hand them their pay, and away you go. That's how the industry worldwide paid its crew members, which is mind-boggling. So I realized, well, what do those crew members do? Well, a lot of them basically send money home. So and how do they do that? Well, if they're lucky enough to be able to get off of a ship in port, they would go up to a bodega or a remittance place, take out the cash that they just received, and send money home. So I made contact with Travelex at the time, which was an international wire service, and I realized if I could take that wire service and connect it to a payroll card in maritime and enable crew members to get paid and send money home when they were on board, we would have a real solution. So we approached Travelex with this concept, didn't even have a program, and said, I've got this idea. And they bought into it. And we were the first company ever in the world to take a pure wire service and integrate it into a payroll card. And I remember actually where I was standing when that first wire happened. I was actually at a holiday lunch at MTN's offices. And I saw the email and said, oh my God, somebody used this service. And the next day, there were 2 wires. And I realized basically we solved the problem for the industry. We enabled the companies to pay their crew members electronically instead of cash, and we enabled those crew members to send money home without ever leaving the ship. And that solved the problem. And today, that program is universally accepted and utilized across the cruise industry worldwide. So we fundamentally changed an entire industry in terms of how they pay crew members. But it was strictly accidental. There was no grand plan to go, this is the market that I'm targeting.
It's actually hard to believe. I know the maritime industry is traditionally conservative, but it's hard to believe that crew members are still paid in cash. But looking specifically at the services that you offer to vessel owner operators and to crew members, can you just kind of click down some of the specific advantages or benefits to using your system?
Sure. I actually wanted to address the comment regarding cash in the industry. And as I said earlier, the cruise industry, historically, before all this got started, everybody was paid in cash. Billions of dollars in cash were distributed to crew members every year. In fact, I was at Princess Cruises once, and they were describing a process in which cash was delivered on board. And for MLC purposes, you actually had to pay the crew member in full. But if the crew member owed money back to the cruise line, they'd have to stand in the second line to pay the crew member back, to pay the line back. And then the crew member get off the ship, so they asked them to hold cash. And they said they had $40 or $50 million in cash circulating on their ships at any one point in time, being distributed and coming back on board. And basically they said, we know that it's insane, and it's incredibly inefficient, and this is the solution. We will get to it because we have so many other issues. The commercial industry is a little bit different. They pay crew members a combination of both cash and a wire sent home. A crew member is on a $2,500 a month contract, and the company says, hey, you can get paid all of your money on board, or you can maybe restrict it to $500 on board. You can take it as a cash advance. We'll wire the $2,000 home. We did a presentation once a couple of years back in Manila at Crew Connect, and I did a back of the envelope calculation. If you look at the BIM code estimate in terms of number of ships out there, call it 60,000 commercial vessels, and you take an estimate in terms of how much cash typically is on board at any one point in time, and then you make an estimate in terms of how often that cash is actually recycled, there was somewhere along in the order of $4 to $6 billion in cash being distributed in the commercial industry worldwide at any one point in time. And if you factor in a cost associated with that, 3% to deliver it, it's an enormous number. And not only is there the cost to deliver the cash, but there's also the capital cost of maintaining that on board. And for a lot of companies, depending on the trading routes of those ships, they would have to put cash on board for months at a time because they couldn't deliver cash to a US dollars to a port in Africa, or it was expensive in a particular port in Europe. So you brought the comment back about the conservative nature of the industry. It is an old industry, and it takes a long time to change. One of the things that we see is the positive effects of the pandemic is companies really, people are stuck at home, and it's becoming that much more difficult to manage their businesses, whatever aspect of managing their businesses are, is chartering, crewing, and paying their crew members. So, and arranging for the delivery of cash on board. And I asked a rhetorical question to companies: you deliver cash to a vessel, what do they do with it? If the crew members can't get on board, it serves no purpose. So we think that this pandemic has finally shaken the industry to look at basically why do we need cash on board. With regard to services, companies pay crew members one of two ways. They send cash on board and they send a wire home. Well, if you have 1,000 crew members or 2,000 crew members or 5,000 crew members, you're potentially doing 2 or 3 or 4 or 5,000 wires a month, which are not easy. They're expensive and they're incredibly inefficient. So ShipMoney solves both sides of the equation regarding paying crew members. It's a much more cost-effective way in terms of providing advances as opposed to cash, and it's a much more cost-effective way in terms of paying crew members, because with with the push of a button, crew members get paid in real time instantaneously. One of the downfalls of wires is they take time. So you could make an argument under MLC or under ITF requirements that crew members are actually not paid on payday because of the delay in terms of getting those wires sent. And there's another aspect to it, I call it sort of the hidden aspect, is if a crew member has an account that's denominated in a foreign currency and their contract is in US dollars, the company basically will honor that and say, okay, here's your $2,000, I wired you $2,000. But the receiving bank receives the $2,000, does the conversion, and puts the money in a foreign currency into that bank account. That is an opaque transaction. The crew member does not see the exchange rates, and they don't get 100% of their pay. So companies realize to say, not only can we fulfill the contractual obligation in terms of paying them on payday, but they get 100% of their wages. And once those crew members receive their wages, they have much greater control in terms of what to do with them. And we built a very interesting technology that enables the crew members to do comparison shopping. So if they're sending money to, say, Manila, and it's for cash pickup, they actually can see what the rates are and what the costs are on a comparative basis between the services and select one of those. And that can all be done from the ship directly from the app. And we are working on our phase 2 of our development, which is our scheduling application. And we call it a universal scheduler. This will enable crew members to not only schedule a wire payment. I get paid on the 10th, and on the 10th of the month, I want $1,000 to go to this bank account. But we're also leveraging that in terms of offering a scheduler for all of our outbound remittances, Western Union, MoneyGram, TransFast, mobile top-up. So as I like to say, set it and forget it. You go into port, I want $1,000 sent via Western Union on the 15th of the month, and I want $1,000 sent to my bank account, and I want $500 sent to my grandmother's companion card. It's all done. The crew member doesn't have to do anything and effectively manage their pay. And that is a strong benefit both for the companies as well as the crew members.
Why don't you give us an overview of ShipMoney's business today using the metrics of your choice?
So through persistence, through trying to understand what the pressure points are, what the solution is for that particular industry. We've been incredibly successful over the last couple of years in terms of penetrating into the commercial space. And it's actually one of the positive impacts to our business with regard to the pandemic has been an increase in bringing on clients and creating interest in our program in the commercial sector. And we have a very substantial listing of commercial clients that we have signed. We are utilizing ShipMoney across the world in multiple instances, including finally signing Maersk, which was a company that took us essentially over 10 years to close. And it was a validation of an idea that I had 10 years ago. And it's very self-satisfying to say, I saw something and we developed a solution for it. But of course, another part of our business is the cruise business, which has been detrimental for hundreds of thousands of individuals and companies and whatnot. And we do have a cruise portfolio. Obviously, it's under duress. We believe in it. I fully believe that the cruise industry will come back. It's a viable industry. The travelers are incredibly loyal, and there is pent-up demand. We all want to go on vacation somewhere. And one of the things about the cruise industry, it's a very cost-effective way to travel. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next year or two in terms of consolidation and the shakeout and whatnot. But our largest cruise client, MSC Shipping, somehow or another has found a solution. They've been effectively sailing for the last couple of months out of Europe, and they're a privately held company, so their economics are a little bit different than the commercial operators, the publicly traded commercial operators here in South Florida. It's been an interesting ride for us in terms of watching what's happening on the cruise side, but also on the positive side, the growth that we've seen on the commercial sector, and that runway has years to go.
When you look out your window today with that wonderful ShipMoney logo on it, where do you see it? Where do you see opportunity?
Actually, when I look out that window, I see a palm tree, frankly. Which, if you live here in South Florida, palm tree, when I see palm trees, I always think that they're smiling because they're really happy trees. And maybe that is the example in terms of the industry. I think that one of the impacts of this pandemic has been a realization by the industry and individuals not in the industry of the seafarers. And the recurring theme in the industry is repatriation and crew members that are stuck on board, and the critical nature of what they really do. And I think that companies out there are really becoming that much more sensitive to the needs of the seafarers. One of the biggest effects is SATCOM. If you go back in time, just the last year, basically it was a problem. It's expensive. Some companies were very generous about it, but most were not. So maybe they offered internet, maybe they charged their crew members, maybe they restricted it. But now it's a requirement. It's a human welfare need. And I think it's the same thing in terms of food. I think it's the same term in terms of exercise equipment, in terms of rest. I think that the companies, the industry has realized how important seafarers are and is making concerted efforts in terms of taking care of them. Certainly, every day in the news we read about mental health and wellness programs and whatnot, and that's a positive thing. We've always believed that ShipMoney is a crew welfare benefit, and that's how it should be introduced to crew members. It gives them something that they don't have today, and we really believe that. So hopefully, this positive effect is permanent. It's not, when all of this goes away and there's a vaccination out there, the companies don't go back to the way in which they would treat seafarers as chattel to some extent. And in my company, the most important thing are seafarers. I tell everybody, they are out there working. Look around your room, look around your house. Most of the things came on a ship somewhere, and they are hidden. And every dollar matters to them, and every issue matters to them. They're away from their family. They're working far beyond their contract. They're worried about their family members, and that one issue is really important to them. And I really pride myself and our company in terms of the services we provide to our seafarers. We take care of them. We really take care of them. And one of the things that we also do as a company is, at least pre-COVID, is everybody would go out to ships. Everybody would go out to ships. Everybody go see clients. And we made that commitment because you don't really understand the environment until you're out there. We did this on cruise ships, of course, although we have visited commercial vessels as well. But it's important that customer service and accounting and operations and sales understand the environment and understand the people. And I think it really resonates in terms of services we provide.